ahead.
Good morning, good afternoon, shalom, salamu alaikum, namaste, peace be upon you. Glory be to the most beneficent that we are here. My name is Trevor Garifuna Palacio. I am your special host today. Thank you, President Daniel Mwambuno, for the opportunity to host this very important subject matter with our special guest all the way from Papua, Raki. Again, we are the great seal of the United States of Africa and the global Pan-Africanism movement. The focus of both the United States of Africa and the global Pan-Africanism movement is Black empowerment, not on the level of building simple businesses, but on the level of creating institutions that will fortify the future of everyone, not only individuals on the East or the West, but all 7 continents of the globe where there are Black people, people who look like us, that we are empowered, that we have a voice, and that we have representatives, because the things that we suffer come from a lack of knowledge, one, but mainly from the lack of proper representation. We have people who are taking advantage of us, not just as a Garifuna man. I'm a Garifuna man. My people are being killed right now in Honduras. We were exiled by the British from St. Vincent, the land of the blessed, in 1797 to Honduras. We ended up in places like Belize, Nicaragua, Guatemala, now the United States of America. But we were the victims of an attempted genocide, but a definite exile. And that is what they want to do with our brothers and sisters right now in the Papua region, Pacific Islands. We're going to go into a conversation today that is going to take you back in history. This conversation, Brother Raki, is going to bring you to 2021 from a de facto movement by the Dutch, a transfer of power. If I'm not wrong, Raki, in 1963, correct?
1962, to be exactly, brother. Yes.
Thank you, brother. From a transfer of power, a colonial power, from the Dutch to the Indonesians in 1962, today, 2021, we've lost hundreds and thousands of Papuan lives. First, I want to say shame on Indonesia. Shame on the Islamic community, because Indonesia is a majority Islamic governing state. Shame on you, Indonesia. Shame on the Muslim world. Shame on you for watching this happen, transpire to our brothers and sisters in Papua. Shame on you. And I'm calling you out directly for being Muslims and closing your eyes to the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not ask us, would not allow us to close our eyes to. We close our eyes and pretend not to see. Shame on you. To our ancestors, we want to let you know that Raki is here. Raki can't sleep at night. We want you to know that Daniel Mwambuno is here. Daniel Mwambuno can't sleep at night. We can't sleep at night, ancestors, because we know that your pain still exists. And it moves us to stay consistent. Ancestors, Raki is here. Trevor Palacio is here. Daniel Mwambuno and many more of us are here. Do not worry. Your agenda will continue to move forward. Raki, he is the international spokesperson for the FWPC. Brother Raki, if you could please introduce yourself to the world and express the way you feel currently about the condition before we go into our 3 subject matters of racism, human rights, and the special autonomy law. Brother Raki.
Yes. Thank you, Brother Trevor Palacio, for having me and hosting this. Thank you, Brother Daniel Mambuno, for organizing this, facilitating this once again, giving my people, the West Papuans, and the campaign a voice to our family, brothers and sisters all across the world. So on behalf of my people, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of them. My name is Raki, and I am, as Brother Trevor said, the spokesperson of Free West Papua Campaign. And the mission of our campaign is to re-educate the world about what is happening on the western half of the island of New Guinea, right above the Australian continent, where our brothers, the Aboriginals, have been slaughtered by colonialism, such has happened on other parts of the world. And now they've tried it once again to the people again in West Papua, the indigenous Black Melanesian West Papuan people. So my story started 4 months before I even was born, when the new colonizers after the Dutch took over our ancestral land, West Papua, which is colonized now by Indonesia. So 4 months before I was born, the Indonesian military assassinated my father, Arnold Ab, who was an anthropologist and a famous musician. And he wrote songs about our way of life, the indigenous people's way of life, the way we cook, the way we eat, and the desire towards our independent nation. So after his assassination, my mother and 3 brothers and me, still my mom's belly, fled to the neighboring Papua New Guinea, the independent state of Papua New Guinea, where I was born in a refugee camp 4 months after the assassination of my father. Not much later, within a year, we fled to the Netherlands, where I grew up in the city of The Hague. And now, after realizing that why we arrived in the Netherlands and why I didn't have a father anymore, that transformed me into the person I became today, which is a freedom fighter and storyteller, to break down the dangerous silence in the Dutch institutions, in the global institutions, in the mainstream media, keeping the genocide in West Papua a secret until this day. And that is why I became the spokesperson of Free West Papua Campaign, to took my part, and it's a privileged, way to expose to the world about the silent secret genocide in West Papua and Indonesia's secret colony.
Brother Raki, your father's name?
Yes, so my father's name is Arnold Ab. Arnold Ab.
Okay. I want to take a moment of silence for your father, Arnold Ab.
Thank you.
For your father and the ancestors that we have gained, and I speak this from an indigenous person's perspective, we gain ancestors. We do not die, we move.
Exactly.
They're with us. Your father Arnold is alive because Raki is alive.
Absolutely true.
Let's start this conversation and go straight into excuse me there. Go straight into racism.
Yes,
racism, is something that I believe people misunderstand. And they believe that racism is something that anyone can be. And this is what I mean by this. The term race is a brand new word. even newer than the word race is the word racism. It's a lot of new words, such as white people, black people, all of that is new. These were coined around the same time that the word race and racism were coined. But per the definition of the word racism, you have to be pro-Anglo-Saxon. I repeat, for those who read and can write, Google up the word race, but really look it up and go to the etymology of the word racism, and you have to be pro-Anglo-Saxon. Anglo-Saxons are Caucasians, are white people, are a particular group. So you have to be pro this group. So when people say that black people could be racist, that defeats the definition of the word racism and being racist. So I wanted to start off by saying that about racism before we go into racism, because we are the victims of racism, right? We never victimized anyone through any racist methodology because we can't.
Because we can't. That's true.
Because we can't. Because the creators of racism are the same creators of these colonies, or the same creators of the colonization mentality. Yeah. Right? So what is it about racism that you know for a fact has the community of West Papua in this condition right now?
So basically, for a lot of people, if you think about the word racism, you know, I have to translate it immediately to what is happening in West Papua, because we have been colonized since the moment the Dutch arrived in West Papua, since the moment the British arrived in whatever part of the world, colonization started, right?
Yeah.
And as you have defined the word racism, there can't be colonialism without racism. So because there is racism, we got colonization, we got slavery, and we got capitalism until this day.
Yeah.
So what you see in West Papua is that this racism is at the core of what is happening all around the people of West Papua, all around the activities in West Papua. These are corporations owned by white institutions, by white companies.
Your camera there, brother?
Are you still there, brother? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, I had the...
There you go.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So what is happening in West Papua is all about institutional racism, first by the Dutch, and now hand over the same system which they've invented. I'm so sorry about that, man. I got the incoming call. Apologies for that.
No worries.
So it's about institutional racism by the current Indonesian government, the current colonizer, but it has been copied by the Dutch, by the British, and Americans and Australians system, which they've used for hundreds of years since slavery started. Right? That is something. It's about the system, as Brother Trevor have outlined it, outstanding, and it's about this system which is very much alive in West Papua and a lot of other parts of the world. So racism is basically, the other race is his attitude is superior against the other race, right? And it's about the white race which have felt superior until this day, because it is the same system which is functioning all across the world. If you look at the IMF, if you look at the World Bank, whatever, the UN, it's all the same mechanism and system and structures of, from the moment slavery and colonization started. It didn't end. The system is still used until this day. So what you see in West Papua is the same system, where it is the mainstream media who've kept this story a secret until this day. We cannot separate it from the colonial and racist system which they've been started 100 years ago. That is something we have to understand very clearly, right? And if you look at the lives of indigenous West Papuans, more than, my father's story is now just one of the 500,000 stories, the victims, right, because of the colonial regime of Indonesia. So that's 1/3, let me say this clear, 1/3 of our population have been killed the last 59 years.
Wow.
1/3 of our people. How is it possible that this is not global news, that CNN is not reporting about it, that
Right.
ABC is not, because our lives, they don't care about our lives. And this is clearly racism. One dead white American or Frenchman or
Yeah.
Dutchman is headline news, but 500,000 indigenous West Papuans is not news, it's not head news. This is institutional racism at its clearest way to explain, right? So
Right.
if you look at our life circumstances in West Papua, indigenous West Papuans are like being handled like third or second class citizens in our own country, knowing
Because
that
because the
yeah,
Indonesians, and I'm just interjecting, keeping your subject and conversation going, and
yeah,
the Indonesians don't look like Papuans, correct?
that's correct, Mara. It's an Asian state, so they look like, Asian ethnic people.
Yes. Okay. So what has become of the world, even though we know that you have to be pro-Anglo-Saxon to be racist,
Mm,
racism therefore can be a practice that
absolutely.
you don't have to be white to utilize, right? You could use it. And especially the closer your skin looks to white, the more they will most likely be in cahoots with you, because we know that the Indonesian government
Mhm.
and the Dutch government just are no longer exactly right.
They're one. They're becoming one.
Yeah, so they're still operating under this. It's like that's why they use the term de facto,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Because when you look at any de facto government, whoever placed that government in place still has a relationship with whomever they placed in power, and possibly the deal is, look, let's both be in power, and you be the operation manager,
Exactly.
and they
Exactly. That's
are the operation managers, right? So
absolutely.
how do we bring this back to racism? Because we know that there's an Asian community.
Mhm.
It's about 3,000 miles away from Papua, right?
It is.
Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah,
so that's a good distance.
it
They're
is.
about 3,000 miles away, but this is one of their provinces that was given to them, and the people that live there are black
That's correct.
or look like me, right?
Exactly. Absolutely.
And they continue to perpetuate what the Dutch, who is white,
Mhm.
they're Asians, they're
Mhm.
doing. Do you see any similarity in the attitude of the Asian towards the black and the white person towards the black?
Basically, they have copied the colonial behavior of the white Dutchmen.
Mhm.
So if they shake hands and they said, we're gonna keep, we're gonna share this power. We both gonna benefit it. But
Yeah,
this is the white man's plan, right? It's
yeah,
They are in control.
yeah,
They are in control. So we have to understand, the superiority in this system, which is not Indonesia, but they are controlled by the Dutch, by the US, and by Australia. Because if these countries decide to turn it around, it can happen. But they want to blame anything. They want to say, no, it's not our problem, it's Indonesia's problem. But behind Indonesia, you
yeah,
got the facilitating structure, which exist of white Western countries.
yeah, yeah. And they're in cahoots with each other. It doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter how they try to twist it, Raki.
Absolutely.
It is what it is. But we're not going to beat a dead horse. This is knowledge that we know is there. And Raki and I and President Daniel and Wambuno, we're people of action. We
Yes.
don't, we just don't lay on information that we have. We gain the information, we learn from it, we build from it, and we're going into the future. So as
Yes.
we said into the second part of the conversation, and
Yeah.
racism has everything to do with it, is human rights.
Yeah.
As I've mentioned, as of recent, and my Garifuna community of Triunfo de la Cruz, Triumph of the Cross in Honduras, of men dressed in military in police uniforms, driving police vehicles, walk into the house of 4 men at 5 a.m., pull them out of their beds, and this happened on July the 25th of 2020. We still don't know where they're at.
Wow.
Again, this is men dressed as police in police vehicles with police weapons, military grade weapons, because the police has been militarized all across the world. Right? Take 4 of our men, they disappear, and we still have not heard anything. But that's just one thing. In 2019, we lost 33 community leaders just in the country of Honduras alone.
Wow.
Dead. Fishermen gone, disappeared. Young man being shot down by the Navy of Honduras. And 33 people, mainly women, executed, it just gunned down in front of their families. Human rights. These violations are going on all across the world, but today the conversation is Papua. Brother, you said that your father Arnold is just one of about 500,000. You said about a third of the community has been annihilated.
That's correct, my brother.
Human rights violations in Papua.
Yes. So basically, since Indonesia took control of West Papua after the agreement they signed with the Dutch in 1962, where there should be a power transition, but it didn't happen in Indonesia. And this is what you tried to mention before, is 1963 was the moment Indonesia invaded West Papua with a military force. And since then, they never left the country. So since that moment, the killing started, the human rights violations started, the intimidation of lawyers, of local journalists, of students, of activists started, and it didn't stop until this day.
Right.
And these numbers should shock the world, but they don't, because mainstream media ignores the human rights violations which is happening on Australia's doorstep.
Yeah.
If you read the title of just one document of Amnesty International of 2018, it says, "Don't bother, just let him die." This is the title of the report of Amnesty International about the human rights violations in West Papua. I know it's cruel at its highest levels. Indonesian military take pictures and videos with lynched indigenous West Papuans and make photos as a trophy. We got generals and police officers get away with murder, with assassination, with group shootings of indigenous West Papuans. Girls and children being raped or killed. This is not 400 or 500 years ago. This is not 50 years ago. This is the reality today, 2021, in West Papua. So the situation is urgency. And if I may highlight 2 more numbers. Firstly is, of course, the 500,000 indigenous West Papuans estimated by NGOs in the last 59 years. I put another number beside it, which is that we have become a minority in our own country. 1.2 million indigenous West Papua estimates versus 1.3 million Indonesian transmigrants from other parts of Indonesia. This is a transmigration policy which started from the moment Indonesia colonized West Papua. So they are willing to wipe out the indigenous Papuans.
It's an invasion, Raki.
It is, and it is government guided, government supported, and the Western countries are right behind Indonesia. And this is the thing we should realize as Black community all across the world, because the system of slavery and colonization didn't end. It is still happening right under our eyes. And that is why it is important to connect, to share the stories, to understand that these structures are very much alive. Apartheid didn't end. It is happening. And they are trying to distract us with Facebook, with TikTok, with all kinds of whatever challenges on social media to make sure that we are not aware about the system which are still threatening the black people all across the world.
And that's exactly what Josiah Tadasi is saying. He says what is important is the oppression of a people, whether by whites, Asians, or even blacks. But in this case, we see racism alive and kicking. It's alive and well. The human rights violations are alive and well. But let me ask you, as a global spokesperson, international spokesperson, what are global institutions like the UN doing? Because if I'm not wrong, that transition between Indonesia, 1962, and the Dutch, the UN was right in the center of that whole transition.
Yes, yes, sir, my brother. So that's the the most important thing we have to realize, because it's part of that colonial racist system. If you look at what happened in West Papua, the UN was there. They facilitated this transfer at the cost of the black Melanesian West Papuan lives. And until this day, it is the UN who is absent.
Right.
So that means they have accepted this illegal racist transfer of West Papua by the Dutch to Indonesia, right? We cannot conclude else. This is an international fraud where this global institution, the United Nations, who should be there for peace and justice, ignored the basic human rights of the indigenous West Papuans.
Man, look, I tell you what, even though we're sharing this tough news, this reality that our little girls and our little boys are being raped up and down Papua, West Papua, right at the doorstep of Australia.
Yeah.
So Australians are just watching this happen, man.
They do.
They again, closed, blind eye, don't see anything, don't say anything. And when they come on this side of the world, they act as if they care for people, and they become philanthropists, and they want to be volunteers, etc., 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 when they know good and well that people are being murdered left and right.
Absolutely.
Let's go straight into point number 3.
Yeah.
And point number 1 has been racism. The second point is human rights and human rights violations. As we segue into point number 3, which is, as far as I'm concerned, a farce called the Special Autonomy Law, also known as the Special Autonomy Act, which is also attached to a Special Autonomy Fund.
Yes.
Brother, I want to read something for the people real quickly.
Yeah, go ahead, brother.
A couple of points that I want to make sure that I want them to get. And whatever I don't hit, please, I want you to touch up on.
Yeah.
And it's a book, and it's a 2-pager called the West Papua Information Kit. I recommend that everybody just go online and print it because it gives you the basic breakdown of what is going on. Now, autonomy is an admission by Indonesia that the territory requires additional protections from normal Indonesian administration. I'm going to repeat that one because this Raki speaks to how weak the Special Autonomy Law and Act actually is, and where it contradicts itself. And 12 years, it's been 12 years, if I'm not wrong, 19 years, 2001. It's been 19 years since the Special Autonomy Law was passed, and poverty is higher in Papua today, right? Today. And what they say is autonomy is an admission by Indonesia that the territory requires additional protection from. It's not like from someone else, Raki, from Indonesian administration. So the first point is this: can the same person who knocks you down and beats you up, are you okay with them coming with a Band-Aid and some alcohol and saying, hey, you're going to be okay, Raki? You're going to be would you believe them? Would you believe them, Raki? Would you believe that they have your best interest at heart?
Absolutely not.
If they came with the alcohol pad and you know, a list of I'm sorry's, knowing that tomorrow they're going to do the exact same thing to you all over again. So what is your thinking on the special autonomy law? And there's a few more points that I'm going to read that I want to make sure we hit. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, so I think your description about the feeling and the sentiment is very clear. How can we trust a murderer who've killed us, who have violated our basic human rights since the moment they occupied us and since the moment they have installed this so-called autonomy, right? It's a reality on paper. The reality in real life is that the West Papuans didn't saw any welfare, that they didn't saw any more democratic rights where they could, you know, build on. You know, they didn't saw any social uplifting in West Papua. We saw everything declining, from social standard living to you know, healthcare services, to democratic rights. Everything declined. Also, you know, human lives, you know, disappeared. So the reality was that we became a people marginalized, stigmatized, and by institutional racist system on a daily basis. So, you know, this is a big distraction from the real agenda, which is, you know, bringing the indigenous West Papuans towards a extinct race. That is the agenda.
Right.
That is the agenda. And we can be clear, there's no doubt about it. The only agenda that we have been seeing is that they want to kill us, they want to suppress us, and they want to get rid of us.
Now, the main thing that I want to say about the special autonomy law or act, which is in Article 56 and 57, if I'm not wrong, law number 22 of the Indonesian governing process is this: autonomy was offered by Megawati government as a substitute in place for self-determination. So it's important that our listeners today understand what we mean by this. There were two options. You see, there was autonomy, because when you look at, I've been reading this literature which breaks everything down from a legal perspective.
Yeah, perfect.
Right? So when you look at the word autonomy, it has a different connotation, or it empowers our people, your people, to a certain point. But the influence, because the way the special autonomy law was written was that it is supposed to be based on peace principles of the Papuans. And that the government state of Indonesia could not intervene with it at all. And that the final verdict of a traditional or a customary court of the Papuan society was more binding than the state. But in the special act, the Indonesian government under Article 57 defeats itself, where it actually says, well, if it's a certain type of crime, then we're going to have to intervene.
Yeah.
They defeat the purpose one more time. But let's go back to autonomy. That's why autonomy is really not what we want, right? Because we already have autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
And they took everything from us. And they're going to give us autonomy back and still keep everything?
Exactly.
Right. So let's go into the word self-determination.
Yeah.
You see, self-determination is what forces the United Nations to come back into this conversation, brother.
Yeah.
Because self-determination means we can govern ourselves as an institution without any outside influence. So what the government did in 2001, the Indonesian government did under the government of Megawati, they said, you know what? We're about to, these people want self-determination too much.
Mm-hmm.
We have to figure out how we can squash that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
They took some people who look just like you, brother. You probably know their name.
Mm-hmm.
Actual Papuan leaders
mm-hmm.
who had an influence on the society. They took people look just like you
mm-hmm.
to encourage the people otherwise to go with autonomy instead of self-determination. So
exactly.
Between autonomy and self-determination and the breakdown. And right now I want you to just talk about the people. Let's remove, and this is going to be a little controversial, but that's my style. I go with the flow of the spirit, and the spirit tells me which direction to go. And then if it's controversial, then so be it. It is what it is. Daniel will invite me back. I want to talk about not the Indonesian government. Now I want to talk about the Papuans. I want to talk about Papuans who are in a position to make some noise, but they're not. I want to talk about some Papuans who know that actual working together is going to be of benefit to us, but you see them dancing and partying with the elite of the Indonesian government. I know they exist. And guess what? I don't have these facts. It's just that that's what I see in my community too. Right? Let's talk about those individuals. Is there any responsibility? Because you're being responsible, Raki, Raki, by doing what you're doing right now, by sharing this information, by being on this show today, and blessing the world with your message to bring back the memory of your father, Arnold. You're doing your part. But how about those who could be doing their part, but are not?
So, yeah, thank you, brother, for outlining, the autonomy on the judicial point of view, which was very clear. So thank you for that. And I think there is a huge turning point happening the last 5 to 10 years since the moment, our campaign was launched. We saw a huge mobilizing awareness campaign all across West Papua. And what I have to mention is that this special autonomy is going to Indonesia, the colonial Indonesian regime is going to try to extend it, to mislead the people once again. But what we have realized, I think, last year is that we have informed the indigenous West Papuans properly. And what we see today is that we got a massive mobilization in West Papua, which is now demanding not a extension of this failed fake special autonomy, but they are demanding the right to self-determination. And last December 1st, we have been launched a provincial government, a so-called temporary provincial government, the interim government led by His Excellency Mr. Benny Wenda, the chair of the United Liberation Movement for West Papua. And now we got a massive movement from religious leaders, from village leaders, from activists, students, and academics supporting this United Liberation Movement to finish the job. So So one, the people have clearly said we don't want this fake special autonomy anymore.
All right.
And the majority of the indigenous West Papuans, and I think that's more than 1.8 million who've signed a petition for referendum for self-determination, who've said enough is enough. So my message to those who've worked with the colonial Indonesian government, my brothers and sisters in West Papua, now is the time to unite with the mass people of West Papua under the wing of the United Liberation Movement for West Papua, under the leadership of His Excellency President Benny Wenda, to finish the job. And that is the spirit currently in West Papua, which I am educating and feeling as well in the Netherlands and in our campaign, my brother.
United Liberation Movement, you said?
Yes, United Liberation Movement for West Papua.
Okay.
Under the leadership of His Excellency Benny Wenda.
Well, you heard it here. I'm sure it's not the first time that you've heard it before. No to the Special Autonomy Act. No. Yes to self-determination for the powerful people, the legendary people of West Papua. As we bring this conversation to a close, self-determination is a good place to close it, because it's important that you guys, every single listener, both male and female, understand that the mission statement of the United States of Africa and the global Pan-Africanism movement is self-determination. That's what it is. That is what Mosiah Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, Brother Arnold App, that is what they died for. Self-determination. We don't want anything less. And this message goes to the white community that is watching and listening. This message goes to the Asian community that is sitting and watching. We're not the enemies of the state. Your practices prove that you are enemy of the state. And the state that we speak of is planet Earth. Because we as indigenous people, and Raki, I want to hear your perspective as a Papuan, but we as an indigenous people, we respect and we honor Mother Earth.
Absolutely.
She is our provider. She is our keeper. So therefore, it is our duty. We're duty bound to keep her. So
absolutely,
autonomy or anything less than self-determination is not going to position us to protect Mother Earth. Brother Raki, your closing comment. We want to thank you for being our guest here today. Pray that it won't be the last as your movement continues to evolve, as our ancestors continue to keep you. We're with you. Raki.
Thank you very much, Brother Trevor, for having me on the show. Brother Daniel, thank you so much for giving the West Papuan people a voice and looking at what is happening in West Papua, that the indigenous West Papuans have no freedom, are marginalized, and have not a lot of resources. We have created this immense momentum. Mm-hmm. And all we need is that our brothers and sisters all across the world to find the courage to do the right thing. Understand that we still live in a colonized world and that Mother Earth needs us all, because we are the saviors of world biodiversity, of the connection between man and nature. We are the living example. So please do raise your voice. And I'm confident that if you find the courage and the responsibility, we have the power to create a sustainable future where we can take the lead and showing what humanity is. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Brother Trevor.
And where can people reach you? If they want to catch up with you, is there a phone number? Is there an email address? And is there Facebook page, a Twitter page? Where can people find you?
Absolutely. So we got our social media channels: Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, which is you can find on Free West Papua Campaign. Our global page will be www.freewestpapua.org, and you will find my contact details through our website. Thank you.
www.freewestpapua.org. That's
yes,
where you
Brother
can,
Trevor.
That's where you can catch up with Brother Raki and
Yes.
myself. You could find me at on Facebook under Audabuni Amudununi, or you could visit us at garifunaworld.com. Garifunaworld.com. Brother Raki, remember earlier I mentioned that we don't die, we move.
Absolutely.
Well, wherever we move to, I want to remind you that your ancestors, the Papuans, and what's the original term in the Garif in the Papuan language for your name?
Once again, Brother Trevor.
What is the original word for the name of Papuans? The original name of the Papuans in your language?
I should ask my mom. I really apologize for the native term.
Okay,
the native term. I will come back on that, my brother.
Okay, so do Papuans still speak a native tongue?
More than 250 different tribes with their own very language. Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Therefore, knowing your history is very important. My point is this: the Garifuna, that's the name of my people. We're the Garifuna. My Garifuna ancestors and your Papuan ancestors are somewhere together.
Yes, for sure.
They're celebrating right now. They have been waiting for us to connect.
Absolutely.
Your ancestors, Brother Daniel, with mine, all of the brothers and sisters, your ancestors are all together with our ancestors today, right now. Some of you may have goosebumps. And if you have those goosebumps is your ancestors reminding you we're here. And they're celebrating because we're moving their agenda forward. Y'all here? Y'all with me? We're moving the agenda forward. We don't give up. We will not give up. Self-determination or nothing at all. Brother Daniel, we salute you. Our guests, we salute you, sir. Our listeners, we salute you. Until the next time, my name is Trevor Garifuna Palacio, and we are the United States of Africa and the Global Pan-Africanism Movement.